today's presentation, we are covering tractor-mounted operation and the maintenance of tractors. Now, tractors come in lots of various different forms and sizes, from larger machines to smaller domestic units, which would have a rotary mowing deck on the underside. There's obviously quite old tractors still knocking around, but there's also newer technology with GPS self-tracking systems in, for example. So before we start, what actually is a tractor? Defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, tractor is a motor vehicle with large back wheels and thick tyres that are used on farms for pulling heavy loads of machinery. We know that you can use tractors in a sports turf setting, but there is also other industries which do also use tractors outside of agriculture. A tractor is an engineering vehicle specifically designed to deliver lots of torque at slow speeds. For those purposes of hauling a trailer, machinery such as that's used in agriculture, mining or construction, implements may be towed behind or mounted on the tractor. And the tractor may also provide a power source for these implements, so they are now mechanized. The importance of tractor operation. Efficient turf maintenance is essential for sports fields. Using things such as tractors can save a lot of time and labour, particularly if it's something, a large job of aeration. Doing it by hand with a smaller machine is going to take a lot longer and going to cost a lot more salaries, fuel, potentially parts, more usage, that sort of thing. Tractors do provide precision, especially in various tasks such as mowing, aerating and seeding. Proper tractor operation ensures the highest quality sports turf standards are created. So these are basic things like the 3-point turns at the end of a mowing run, whether it's off a golf green or it's off a sports field, not turning in wet areas, avoiding cutting in wet areas, not driving through wet areas, for example. There's a lot more, but there are just a few ideas for you. Obviously, safety first. Safety is paramount in tractor operation and prevents injuries and accidents. PPE should always be worn. This can be things such as gloves, eye protection, ear protection, depending on the implement that you have on and if you have a cab or not. If you don't have a cab, then obviously your defenders, hard hat, those sort of things are going to come into play more often. If you do have a cab, you might not have to need to wear those particular things. It will say within the manual for each machine. The basic safety guidelines: always wear seatbelts where possible and maintain safe distances from obstacles. Now, an interesting one on the seatbelts, a lot of insurers will say not to wear seatbelts around water courses, but obviously if you're on a hill, then you want to be making sure you've got your seatbelt. You should also ensure that you've got a ROPS bar on, you've got the ROPS bar up, that's the anti-roll bars. They have to ensure that you don't get squashed. Basically, if you've got your seatbelt on and the machine rolls over, you're not the part between the ground and the machine. Correct training is a big thing, and we're going to touch on this again later. If somebody is trained, it doesn't actually mean they're competent. So having the ability and knowledge and skill to do the job successfully is competence. Training is just being shown that you actually know how to use that machine. It doesn't particularly mean that you can use the machine successfully. So there's a few rules and regulations, and these are just some of the main ones that I've sort of picked out here. There is more than this, but these are the ones which sort of cover the day-to-day use of a tractor. So obviously the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, Provision and Use of Work Regulations, so PUWER 1998, Road Traffic Act 1988 if we're on the roads, Motor Vehicles, so this is obviously driving regulations and licenses 1999, Agricultural Tractor Regulations 1974, Control of Vibration at Work Regulations 2005, Noise at Work Regulations 2005, and the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health, so COSH 2002. So the types of tractors and attachments, there's quite a lot of different size tractors and a lot of different things you can put on tractors in terms of implements. Common tractors include the compact ones for smaller areas, and larger ones might be used for larger sports fields or agricultural areas. This is obviously to So the larger one can hold a bigger machine, which might cover a bigger area. The bigger machine is obviously going to be heavier as well, might need more power, whereas a compact tractor, for example, might just be have a cutting deck on it, cutting a small area. It also might just be used for dragging or moving materials around. Bigger machine might be using things such as that bottom picture where you've got quite a heavy Wiedemann, but also takes a lot of power or torque off the engine via the PTO. So actually needs quite a bit of substance behind the engine just to run the implement itself, not just even to lift it. There are various attachments, mowers, aerators, seeders. These cater to specific needs dependent on what you purchase. Selecting the right attachment is crucial for maximizing the efficiency in sports turf maintenance. So this goes back to what we always say, ensuring that you've got the right tool for the job. Preparing the tractor. Now, one of the main things obviously is a pre-start check. This includes a visual inspection, but also going and taking things apart which need to be checked often. Things such as the air filter, poking your head inside the fuel tank. Can you see any debris in there, or caps on properly, or any parts damaged or broken? Is the machine making noises which it shouldn't be? And then we want to be doing things such as our general checks on sort of fluid levels, engine oil, hydraulic fluids, ensure it's properly lubricated. Do we need to grease any grease nipples as well before we go out on that machine? Inspecting tires, lights, and any other components which are optimal for the performance. There's a nice list there on the right, pre-start checklist. So, coolant, air filter, links, pins, wheel nuts, gearbox, jockey wheels, tire pressure, fuel level, horns, wipers, anything that we need for that particular scenario, which is required for that machine or written within your risk assessment for that task. So things such as first aid kits and fire extinguishers. Let's farm safely. I thought this was a very good poster, but really demonstrates sort of the things we should be checking in a visual manner. So we've got the clean windows, handbrake, hydraulics, PTO, cab floor, steps, transmission oil, tires, engine oil, controls, lights, mirrors, radiators, brake pedals. But obviously the whole of the machine itself, if we see that the exhaust is hanging off, it might not be safe to use. We have to use a little bit of common sense in there as well, although common sense can't be assumed. We need to ensure that we've trained our staff adequately to understand and pick out these various bits. Actually operating the tractor, before we do need to use it, we need to understand the basic controls of steering, throttle, brakes, not just for smooth operation, but also for safe operation. Follow the proper starting procedures and shutting down procedures. The amount of times that I see people turning off a mower or tractor when it's still at full revs. A lot of these machines are using turbos, a lot of the E-machines, the economical ones. It's not good to turn it off at full revs. We want to wait till the revs idle down a little bit, for the safety of those turbos, for those engines, for the longevity. Practice safe driving on turf, emphasizing slow and steady movements to prevent damage. So this is when I spoke about the 3-point turns earlier at the end of a run. We're not just sweeping around in one run and re-going, because that's going to cause damage on the turf, particularly if we're in 4-wheel drive, for example, or we've got heavy duty ag tires on. Realistically, we should be having sports tires on, or turf tires as they call them, but obviously this is not always the case. Again, this is going back to the correct training. If somebody is trained, that doesn't mean they are competent. Have the necessary ability, knowledge, or skills to do something successfully is the ability to use a machine. That doesn't mean you are trained. PTO. Now, this is an interesting one, the power takeoff. So this is the little arm which comes out the back of the tractor, or the little drive link, sorry. And this PTO transfers the power from the tractor to the various attachments or implements. Types of PTO include a rear, mid, and front PTO, each serving different purposes. There is some tractors with all three of those. Most compacts tend to have a mid underneath PTO or rear PTO, and then the larger tractors tend to have a front PTO just because due to the size of them and the engine power, they're able to have that extra PTO on them. You can have them on the smaller ones like there is on this picture on the right, but they're not quite as frequently often available. They might be an additional, added extra from the factory. You can see the PTO in the green arrow on the right, pointing into where the PTO just pokes out of the machine there, and there's a little close-up of it in the middle. It's just those star-like grooves in a pin. On the left, we've got the PTO shaft, so that is within a casing on this one. It's within the yellow safety casing, which is required by law to be in place for operational use of that tractor. If it's not there, we shouldn't be using it. 3-point linkage, so it connects the implements to the tractor. On the picture on the right, you can see the 3 points of that linkage. You've got the 2 bottom arms and you've got the top arm there. Top arm's adjustable, 2 bottom arms are adjustable as well. You can have them floating, and you can then also tighten them up once the attachment is on to ensure that it doesn't wobble around on the back of the tractor. Components include those lift arms and the top link and the lower connections. So the arms are on the bottom, the 2 bottom arrows, links are on the end, and then we've got the top link in the middle. Proper adjustment and alignment is essential for safe and effective use. If you've got the machine ever so slightly off to one side, it might mean you're overlapping more than you need to be, thus taking longer, but also gives you, increases the risk of potentially crashing into goalposts and things if the machine's off center. Also puts the weight of the machine off center, which means you've got more chance of rolling over, in conditions such as on banks or cambered sort of surfaces. Mowing attachments, there are lots of different mowing attachments for particular uses, proper height adjustments for various grass types and techniques for effective mowing, including patterns and overlapping. So you can see on the top right, we've got the gangs mower, which is a pull behind tractor mower, or they can be used on a mule, for example. This is self-powered, powered by the wheels that are on the gang units. They then power the cylinder, and then it would just be a normal standard cylinder to bottom blade unit. We have the hydraulic powered one at the bottom right, and then on the left or in the middle, we have the Trimax, which is a rotary powered unit from the PTO of the tractor. Non-mowing attachment, obviously there's lots of different things. We've got the quadruplay here, we've got a Proforce tow behind blower, we've got an aerator, we've got a multi-tiner. All got various different applications and obviously need to be mounted ever so slightly differently. Some need to be higher, some need to be lower, some need to be offset, some might need to float. For example, depending on the surface and the required or desired outcome. Proper attachment and detachment procedures for different implements. So things with a PTO, for example, you might have to put the PTO on first, before you put the bottom arms on, ensuring no one's in the tractor, ensuring that the tractor's turned off. Those sort of safety measures. And then there is a specific guideline for each attachment. So make sure that you're reading manuals, checking the stickers, as I mentioned before. If you've got your PPE on, you've got your ear defenders on, it will say on any particular machine. General maintenance is those regular inspections before we use it. There's pre-start checks, there's post-operative checks, cleaning and storing procedures, ensuring that it's clean, there's no damage, removing any debris, mostly to ensure that we have a safe machine. We're not going to overheat, we're not going to catch fire on any debris that's caught around the engine bay, and it's going to be nice, safe and effective. Lubrication and fluid maintenance, so this is for the optimal performance of the machine, ensuring that any bearings are greased that need to be greased, so the machine's working as effectively as possible. Finally, troubleshooting. Obviously, there's lots of common issues: overheating, strange noises, loss of power. Each situation will have its own outcome dependent on what is wrong with it. If you're unsure, you should obviously then go and speak to an engineer, speak to the manufacturer, get someone to come and look at the machine before you start carrying out any sort of work on it that you aren't sure of. Know when to seek that professional assistance, as I've just mentioned. Complex problems, for example, changing clutches, PTO packs, might require an on-site engineer to come and help you with that. Reporting of any damage, and non-working machines. So this can be a manager, line manager, putting in notes on the machines to say out of order, out of use. You might have to then ring a mechanic, for example, to let them know also. Don't use the machine if it's not safe to use. promptly address any issues as well. Once they've been reported, do you need to follow them up? Do you need to ring that mechanic to ensure that they do get fixed so the machine has less chance of actually being used while broken?